Welcome to Synthesize This. In this episode, I'm going to be synthesizing sort of a hybrid between lead sound or kind of an electric piano type sound with a more funky edge and a hard sync sound. I'm going to be doing it on the Behringer Deepmind 12 synth. Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is initialize a basic patch. So we hold program here and then we get a list of options and it says to default program you press compare. So now we've initialized the basic patch. The other thing we want to do is make sure that all the panel knobs here are what we actually hear. So again, I hold program and if I hit right, it says revert to panel. So now whatever's on the front panel is what we're hearing. So I have a super basic patch now. All right, so let's get started. First thing I'm gonna do is make sure I only have a sawtooth for my oscillator 1 here. And the next thing I'm going to do is add oscillator 2 with some sync, which I'm going to modulate with an LFO. So let's bring up oscillator 2. Right now it's playing the same pitch, but if I turn on syncing, you get that classic sync sound. Which almost gives you kind of a vocal quality. So I'm going to assign the pitch of oscillator 2 to one of the LFOs, let's say LFO 1, so that we can get that kind of vocal funky sound. So every time we trigger a note, it'll be a slightly different sync level. And the way I'm going to assign that is with the mod matrix. So we have this mod button here, and it pulls up this matrix, which we can pick source, destination, and amount. So I'm going to pick the slot 1, and for source, I'm just going to pick LFO 1. I'm going to bring up the depth to, let's start it high for now. I'll just crank it up. I can either use this wheel here to be precise, or the slider here, which gives me kind of broad strokes. So I'm going to max it out for now, just so we can hear the effect. And destination, I'm going to pick oscillator 2 frequency, or oscillator 2 pitch as it's written here. And again, since I have syncing on, we're not actually gonna hear this 2 tones being detuned. We're still gonna hear the main frequency of the first oscillator, but we're gonna hear kind of the timbre of the sound change over time with the LFO, which is gonna give us this cool kind of funky effect. So again, now the amount is exaggerated, so it's a little too extreme. So I'm gonna tone it down a little bit. And here are the controls for LFO 1. I can pick the waveform and the rate. So I'm going to make the rate relatively slow. And one trick, if you want to change the waveform, you can hold edit and then the rate knob becomes the shape selector. So for example, right now I have a triangle wave, but if I wanted the sine wave, I can pick the sine wave now. If I go back to my mod matrix, I can increase the amount. And I have a pitch mod here amount, which I can tweak. Next, I'm going to move on to my filter here. And I'm going to assign LFO2 to modulate the filter cutoff frequency. So I'm going to move down to my second slot. I'm going to pick LFO2. And as destination, I'm going to pick filter cutoff. So VCF frequency it's called here. Again, I'm going to pick a sine wave. Let's see what the square wave sounds like on oscillator 1. Now let's do some pulse width modulation for oscillator 1. So I'm going my third slot, I'm going to assign, let's assign the mod envelope, which is envelope 3 here, to the pulse width of oscillator 1. And here I can select, I have 3 envelopes, one for the VCA, one for the VCF, and then I have this mod envelope here. So if I select the mod envelope, I can tweak the shape. Bring up a little bit of noise just to add a little flavor. I'm also going to assign the mod wheel to control the cutoff frequency of the filter as well. That'll give me a little bit more control over the timbre, so I can kind of play it with my hands. So again, I'm in the mod matrix. I picked mod wheel as my source, and again VCF frequency as my destination, and I can bring up the amount. I'm going to add a bit of more depth for the LFO 1 to oscillator pitch. And finally, I'm going to go into the effects section and add some reverb or delay, or we're going to experiment with some effects to see what they sound like. So the first thing you can change here is the kind of routing. You have 4 different effect slots, and you can change how they're routed, so you can see on the screen here. I'm just going to keep it simple and have them all running in serial, one through each other. And the other thing you can change is how they're routed, so you can bypass it completely, have it as a send or an insert. I'm going to leave it as a send for now. So here you have 4 slots to choose from. In the first slot, let's cycle through some reverbs. I'm going to lower the mix a little bit. I find the effects sound really nice on this synth. It's rare to have a synth with kind of really nice built-in effects. Let's see what some of the other reverbs sound like. So now I've modified it, so it's asking me, am I sure I want to override it? So I'm gonna say yes. This is a chorus verb. Let's add something to the second slot here. Maybe let's go beyond the reverbs. Oh, this multi-band distortion. So I find myself reaching for the rate of the LFO1 a lot. So I think it'd be cool to assign that to either Aftertouch or the mod wheel as well. So let me try to assign it to Aftertouch and see if that works at all. So I'm going to pick pressure here as my source, and as my destination, I'm going to pick LFO1 rate and increase the amount. What I'm doing now is I'm just kind of pressing down on the key to engage the aftertouch and tweaking the modulation depth. That way you know what is the kind of the extreme value you'll get when you push it all the way in. Let's see what the two-pole filter sounds like. Let's see if I engage the filter envelope here and make it more into kind of a plucky shape. And then I'm going to increase the envelope amount, which will control how much the filter envelope controls the cutoff frequency of the filter. So I get this more of a plucky sound. And I'm going to make the envelope, what am I saying? I'm going to make the amplifier envelope have a similar kind of shape. Another cool feature of the Deepmind is this Polycore thing, which basically you can program chords and assign them to individual keys. So it's really simple to program. You engage Polycore by enabling it here, and then you can kind of program things one by one. You have this record button in the middle. So you say record, you play a chord, for example, and now it learned that chord, and now it's asking you what key do you want to assign it to. So let's say I assign it to F here, and then we can keep going. So I'm going to create some kind of G chord. Assign it to G, an A minor chord. Gonna assign that to A, and maybe like an E7 to E. And then you can re-trigger those by just playing the and here you can see the voice allocation. So you have 12 voices on this synth, and it's only using up the ones that you played in the chords, so you're still free to play whatever you want here. So you can kind of use this almost like an arranger, like an accompaniment part. So you can play single note chords if you wanted to, which is useful if you want to have kind of big fat chords that span the whole keyboard, which would normally require 2 hands, and now you can kind of use 1 finger and still solo with that. So I plan on making a bunch more Deepmind videos, including tutorials and demos and jams and stuff. So be sure to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with those. I'll see you guys later.